talk about everything under the sun, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. I am so excited to have Michelle Witherspoon with me today. Michelle, we've been trying to schedule this since the start of this series, like a year and a half. So welcome, introduce yourself. And that could take the full half an hour, y'all.
No. I'm going to keep it really simple. So I'm Michelle Witherspoon. I'm our Chief of Operations, People and Culture for Cisco Systems. That's what I do today, along with a variety of other things. But I'm going to keep it that simple. Go to my LinkedIn if you want to know more.
And Michelle and I have collaborated on projects for probably 4 years now. It's been a really hard week.
Yeah, it's been really hard. Maureen, I've had to take a different approach. It just feels like every day, every week, there's something traumatic. And so from a mental health standpoint, and as an inclusion and diversity leader in this space, you got to take it in because you got to realize how are you offering safety and trust and all that for the employee populations in which we work for, but also you got to protect your own mental energy. Mental health, I think, is just so key right now. So yeah, it's been hard. So how are you? How are you doing with all the everything?
I told you yesterday, I hit a wall, and I had a conversation with Andre Lassiers last week where he was talking about, sometimes it's like, not today, not now. And I hit that wall, and I'm white.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you and
What? You are? I never noticed that in all the years that we've been friends. It's like I have a really good friend of mine here, Steve. He's one of our vice presidents here, and he's a white gentleman. He's been started off as a mentor, a sponsor, and now a friend. And I asked him to be our leader for our Cisco Black Employee Network, and he said, I'm white. And I was like, oh yeah, that part. Don't worry about that part. We're going to come through it. I do think it's important. I didn't cut you off. I want to come back to it, but I think I think you need to have allyship right now, though. Like, I think it is a mandate that we need for me speaking as a Black employee. Like we have to have it.
Absolutely. And I think you and I have a history because we worked together for 4+ years of checking in with each other on, right? I don't ever have any expectation that if you and I have a meeting or you and I have something happening and there is yet another,
something
or right.
Yeah.
As an ally, I have to check in and say, do you have the capacity for this?
Yeah, you actually are so good with that. I mean, you're amazing with it. You just like sometimes be like, how are you? Like the simplicity of that. I think right now, you and I were having this conversation that in today's world, as a business leader in the inclusion and diversity space, your silence is complicit. Like you cannot do that today. Like you just cannot you can't operate in that lens. You have to, people have to know that they feel there's a sense of safety and trust. They have to know that you're paying attention. They have to know that you're doing something about it. Companies have to be brave and bold and deliberate with their actions.
Well, right. and I think, I think about some leaders that are in companies where maybe their executive leadership is not doing that. It's still on you. It's still on you as an individual leader with your team to be bold and brave and to be an ally.
Yes.
Because sometimes, I was asked the question, Michelle, I was on a panel and I was asked the question about what company is doing this really well.
And you said Cisco.
Well, I said, actually what I said was, that's like asking me who my favorite child is. And I said, there in every organization, there are pockets where this is being done really well. I don't know truly of any organization that you can say blanket, this organization is doing great, because there are individual leaders who are not, right? And then there are lots of individual leaders who are. So it's really looking for the pockets.
Yeah.
Because when you think about culture, when we think about inclusion and belonging and culture, that's almost down to the team level.
Yeah.
Versus you can say what, how many employees does Cisco have now? 100,000 or something,
Mhm,
right?
mhm, mhm.
Right?
Yeah,
Within that, there's a whole range, right?
yeah,
Leaning toward, because you all have such a deep commitment, and you put resources, you walk your talk. Overall, Cisco way better than most,
yeah,
right? And within that, incredible pockets of excellence. And I think that's something that people can miss.
yeah.
That, what am I doing as an individual in my leadership role? What am I doing as an individual, quite literally every day, to show up
Mhm.
and behave in an inclusive way and to understand my impact?
Yeah, I think you said it so eloquently. I think as so individuals make up the people, make up the culture, right? That's what culture is. It's made up of how people are acting when they show up at work every day. And I think that the companies that are doing it right allow that latitude of learning, right? And so I'll just speak from my perspective, is that you always have people. I say it like this: there's a journey, right? You always have people that are still like, some people aren't even in the stadium, like they don't get it, they don't. They're like, they're not even in the stadium to begin. They're not even there, right? But and so sometimes I just don't spend a lot of energy on that,
You
right?
can't.
If yeah, I just,
You can't spend it on that
yeah,
20%.
you just can't do it. Like you just, but for those people that are like, I'm in the stadium at the starting line, I'm trying to raise my awareness. I really want to do that to drive some level of action so that I have some type of sustainable, long lasting result. What do I do? Like, where do I start? And I say, when you and I go back and forth with this in a little bit, I just say, start with Googling it. And then you're like, no, there's so much underneath all of that. And then I said, okay, what? And then I know a couple of years ago, you're like, I'm creating an app. I'm creating this everyday inclusion app. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited. Right. And as you know, I was on it like at 1 o'clock this morning, like sending stuff to you. So I was like, sorry, I'm sending this to you so late. But the app is great because it gives vetted information. It's micro learning. It's easy to go in there. And like, I will tell you, I don't know if I told you this. I was searching for Ramadan information. Am I saying the word right? Ramadan? Am I saying it right? All right. So I was searching for Ramadan information on there. I was like, I know it's in there. When did it start? And then I went to the app. I was like, oh, there it is. Right.
Yeah.
The date was in there. The information was in there. It was really easy to get to.
Well,
That's the easiness of it.
and I think it's that individual responsibility. I mean, I will tell you, I was not, right, running and skipping and jumping and saying, let's create an app. It was really hard. It was really
Yeah.
hard. But there's so much bad information out there.
Yeah.
I
That's true.
tell the story of this, and it's absolutely heartbreaking, Michelle. And I'll keep the company. So it was a CHRO that said he had one of his leaders coming to him, um, fairly devastated, because their child had just shared that they were transgender, and they went and they searched Google,
Mm.
and it led them to a YouTube video of a fundamentalist Christian group telling them that their child was an abomination of God and going, right? That's what you can get to with Google,
That's
right?
true.
Or I could say I'm a heart surgeon, right? And
Yeah.
if I know SEO, I could be first for being a heart surgeon. And when
Yeah.
it comes to DEI, this stuff is complex.
It
It
is
is
complex, but
complex.
it's also the action that an individual can take that meets them where they are. So, like, I love the Everyday Inclusion app. You can put it right on your phone. But also, I love that you can go on Netflix right now, and then you can look at the categories and you can watch 13th or you can watch them. Have
Crip
you
Camp.
watched them on Net? Have you watched them on Prime yet? I'm sorry to
Mhm.
digress.
Is it
Girl, you
amazing?
the I had, so as a Black woman, I wanted to watch it to support it, but the micro and the macro, I was triggered. Let's just say I would watch it and then I would have to stop and then I would get
Yep.
triggered and I was like, this is what I'm dealing with sometimes. This is what other people deal with. And so only bring it up because I think with learning, sometimes here's what I say all the time. If you can stay in your lane as a person that is not of color or a man, because let's just take it, women, regardless of race, are dealing with stuff, right? So you can stay in your binary lane and never learn. Some people never have to come out of their lanes ever. They can stay in their binary lanes, nothing affects them and they don't learn. But if we want to be better as a company, as a human race, as in the world, then we have to start to look outside of that. That's why I love this, to talk about it through a journey map experience.
Absolutely. And the idea that we are quite literally never there.
Mm, mm,
I mean, the I learn and I learn and I learn and I make mistakes and I learn and I learn some more and I shift and oh my gosh, I thought it was this, but now it's this. And oh, by the way, what might be inclusive for you might not be inclusive for Denise.
that's right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And
Because
so
we're learning along the way. I mean, you and I were just talking the other day, and I was telling you about my daughter wanting to go study, go live in hostels. Am I saying that right? Okay, yeah. And you were like, "Oh yeah, this is a great experience." I was like, I was so nervous about it. I'm just taking that as an example of something that I didn't have experience with. And you're like, "Oh yeah, I've done this before. This is my experience, and this is the lens in which I saw that through." And I'm a big fan of going outside the country, but I was also like, "What is this hostel thing?" Right? Right?
that's where I said, boy, you get to like you are experiencing people from all around the world,
That's right.
right? And you're all making your toast together in the
Yeah.
morning.
But it's a good example of inclusion through a totally different lens. And I think sometimes people think, oh, I'm going to take an unconscious bias class and then I'm going to do a check mark and I'm inclusive now. Or I'm going to go and read an article on, AAPI or, whatever that is. And what I try to say is that you want to have, that's why I like the name of your app, Everyday Inclusion, because it's every day that you're learning. I am certified in inclusion and diversity. This is what I do, and I am constantly learning. I'm learning through every experience.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the piece. So I think we're never done. And then this idea, Michelle, that I've seen a lot of organizations, excuse me, where they do try and focus on the people that aren't even in the stadium yet. And that's not how you're going to change your culture. You're going to change your culture by the 60% that are what we call NBC, nice but clueless.
Never heard that before. I'm writing that down. Seriously.
I should trademark it because that's really who, right? It's the nice but clueless
Yeah.
who want to move from having good intentions to
Right.
having inclusive impact.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, yeah, and because you and I have been. It doesn't matter what somebody's intentions were, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you
That's
feel
right.
excluded, if you feel like you don't belong, who
That's
cares
right.
what their intention was? And
Yeah,
and
I
that
see.
centers it on the person that's in the dominant group too,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? So,
Yeah.
like this, I hope we're seeing a shift, uh, right, from diversity, equity, that's systems level, that's leadership level, inclusion, belonging, that's you and I all day long.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope we're seeing a shift in organizations balancing the two of those.
I think we are. Do you not see that? I really feel like I was speaking to an external organization the other day, and I said, when I first started in this space, when you said inclusion and diversity, we didn't use all the other words, equity, collaboration, justice, all the stuff that I sometimes get lost in what is the acronym right today, or, what's the
Yeah,
word?
you and I were talking about Jedi.
Yeah, it's like, what? I was like,
Well,
Google Jedi.
that sounds sexy, right? And for those of you, it's justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And everybody wants to be a Jedi, right?
Yes, yes, yeah. I actually like, oh, okay. Like, but when I started in this space, it was really focused, when you said inclusion diversity, it was really focused on the gender lens.
Yeah,
Right,
absolutely.
right. And so it's like, we're going to focus on gender. That is where we're going to put our dollars, resources, time, energy, right? And we made some progress there. Along the way, I think we forgot about some of the other.
Well, and I think we made early and the data bears this out. And it's
Yeah,
not like any women are making it yet, right?
yeah, yeah,
And when we focused on gender, it benefited white women at the expense of
yes,
women of color.
yeah. Preach.
Uh,
Full
yeah,
stop right there.
full stop. And so
Yeah.
anytime our approach is focused on one aspect or one dimension of diversity,
Mhm.
by virtue of doing that, you are excluding other dimensions of diversity.
That's right.
Right. So you have to really think about, okay, right now, if we're really focused on hiring African American and Black employees. And I'm not even going to say BIPOC, because
Yeah.
a lot of organizations right now are not focused, right, on Indigenous.
Yeah.
They're not focused on API, right?
That's right.
If you're only focused there, then
And API, maybe for those who don't know, you want to say
Asian Pacific Islander.
Islander. Yeah.
And you'll sometimes
I'm not even playing around with all the acronyms now. Like, seriously, I'm like, wait a minute, did you just connect API, Jedi, and something like, so anyway, just
right, that's where you can go to the app, right? What is
yeah,
it?
right. Yes, go to that.
If we do that, it will be at the expense of people with disabilities, API, right? So looking
right.
at it and saying
Full spectrum.
full
Yeah.
spectrum diversity. How are we bringing people in? And then, boy, the intersection as well, right? Like looking at you, right? You're like the poster child for intersectionality.
Yeah. No, I agree with that so much. And I think, and that's why I'm so open to speaking about the full person of who I am, Michelle. I am a Black woman, that lives with a disease. I have multiple sclerosis. Everybody knows it here and outside of here, and I speak very freely of it. And I've also I didn't grow up in the United States, came back in here. So just culturally, how I see the world through this lens. And I think this intersectionality of which one is it today? Is it because I'm a woman? Is it because I'm a person of color? Is it because I lost my ability to speak not too long ago and now I came back? Am I being judged? And so this intersectionality of how do I be my full being? How do I show up as my full being? And then how do we think about those communities that are on the margin?
Well, and how, right. And how then how can you show up there has to be the environment for you to show up.
Yes. Yes. We have something we calling addressing the insecurity of being. Right. And so how do you make sure that those communities, we fundamentally look at the human needs of all, right? And that insecurity of being. And so that we want to make sure that everyone feels safe. And those that are really right now the target of hate and violence, African American, Black community, the Asian community. My aunt, my real aunt, not a pretend aunt, like my real aunt is from Hong Kong, and she was at a store recently where two gentlemen said some very inappropriate things to her just because she's Asian. And so, it was really hard.
You were at the gas station.
Oh, you remember that?
Yes.
Yes, right? You remember? I want to tell this story really quickly. I won't go into the details, but this is right. Was it after the election or?
It was right before.
Right before the election, yeah.
Before the election.
Yeah, days before. I was at a gas station. I was.
Right, like that's, you were shook, and you should have been. And that's an example of, is Michelle supposed to go and run this meeting?
Yes. The insecurity of being, I won't go into all the details, but I'm in a sorority, AKA I got my pink on today. And so on my car, my license plate has it on the front of my car. And I was pumping gas and a gentleman made a very inappropriate comment to me. I won't say it on this live. And I didn't even think he was talking to me, honestly. I was ignoring it.
And this is because Kamala is
that's the best. Yeah. Right? That part is
an AKA, which I know, right. Like you want
to. Yeah, our vice president of the United States, she's also an AKA, and so he made a derogatory comment around that, and I didn't think he was talking to me, but then he started walking toward my car, and so happened, and this is why allyship, and just because I think allyship does not mean you're passive. You have to be active, sometimes in the moment. And the gentleman that was on the other side of the gas pump, he saw the guy walking toward me. He came around. And it was a white gentleman. Both of them were white gentlemen. He came around and he just stood there. He looked at me in my eyes, in his eyes. He was like, I got you. Don't worry about it. And when he saw that, the other gentleman turned around. I was so upset. I forgot I called you. And then I was heading to a session that I had to go then talk. And I had to get myself together. That's probably why I called y'all. I sat in the car for a minute. I was scared. I was hurt. I'm about to get teary-eyed thinking about it now, although my allergies have been acting up on this call. Um, but yeah, it was hard. Imagine your employees with that insecurity of just being. I was just being. I was just pumping gas.
Right. Right. And then having to walk in. And I think that's I think this constant check-in, right?
Yeah.
And what can I
Yeah.
do? And how can I like, do you
Yeah.
need support? Because I don't want to pretend to be
Right.
some kind of savior. Right. But like what that
Ooh,
gentleman
pause right there for a second. That's so powerful what you just said. Like, let's lean into that just for a second because
let's go there. Let's go
yeah.
there.
I like because I try to be very open-minded with it, but people of color, whether you're African American, Black, or Asian, or someone with a disability, my son is autistic. He's never looking for someone to come in and be his savior,
No,
right?
my
We don't
daughter,
want that.
right? My daughter, who's a little person, is and she says dwarf. My daughter, who's a dwarf, she is not looking for you to save her,
That's
right?
right.
And in fact, it's super annoying when somebody does try to come in and be she's like, no, I got it. Like, I appreciate.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this and how, because we all have the opportunity to be allies
Yes. Yes.
all the time, right? Depending on, whatever. It's always like, hey, spend your privilege.
Yeah.
So how can you spend the privilege that you might have situationally or systemically?
Mhm.
Um,
How do you do it, Maureen? Give an example. I can name some that you've done with me, but
yeah,
how do you see yourself in that light?
it's always centering on you, not centering on me. What do you
Mhm.
need? Do you need anything? How can
Mhm.
I support? Do you need support? Like, not making the assumption
Yeah.
but I guess it's recognizing and articulating what, like that guy, right? Where he looked at
Yeah.
you and with that look, he
Yeah.
was like, I
Yeah,
got
he
you.
didn't even say anything. He's like, look, and then at the end, when he's like, do you feel safe? That was like what he said right before I left. And he said, are you okay? Do you feel safe? And you know, some other stuff that happened. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's good. And so, but then he sat there. He sat there. He watched me pull off.
Right.
He sat there.
Right.
And that's what I needed at that time. I needed that action. I needed the action.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's that too. And I think it's okay for all of us to check in with our allyship too.
Yeah.
So there've been, I love it, Michelle, because you and I had a conversation once where you're like, I don't ask me right now how I am because you're making me relive what I don't have. And I was like, got it, right?
Yeah.
Ask a different question and sometimes it's not just a question, it's acknowledgement of, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Just know there's a safe space. Here's the thing that I think people struggle with. God, my allergies. I feel like I'm on the verge of sneeze. A sneeze is about to come out. I'm trying to hold it in. I might just let it out because I can feel my eyes like watering up. So I'm not crying over this conversation. So I feel like the sneeze is about to come out. But here's the thing that I think is really important. Sometimes both parties are uncomfortable. I think that when we're in this space that people think black people, I'm going to speak from my experience as being a Black person, right? I think sometimes they're like, oh, well, you tell me, teach me. I really want to learn, teach me. And I'm like,
not my job.
Really?
Not my
That
job.
That part. And then sometimes can both be uncomfortable in this space. But here's the reality. As I say this all the time to women women of color, regardless if they're African American, Black, or Asian, Hispanic, Latino, like women of color. And then there's a certain level of this sort of women, at all women, but I'm going to speak specifically for women of color. We're magical. Like, I say this all the time. There's an amazing book called Black Magic, which talks about Black leaders in corporate America. Once you can navigate through the experiences that I have literally have been in the room where I have been overlooked, women experiencing this, but been overlooked, marginalized by several different components. Once you get through that, there is nothing you can't do.
Yeah.
There's literally nothing. We have the magic of navigating through all these experiences. So don't talk to me about political correctness. Let's have a relationship where we're both learning.
Yeah. Well, and again, people that watch this series, one of the things that I talk about all the time is giving up the privilege of comfort.
That's good. That's good.
Because, I mean, that is a privilege to stay
Yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. And you know what? It's also socioeconomic. Like, let's get real quick. I have people I know, family, friends, that my privilege, because I don't have to worry about where my next meal is coming from. Like,
Yes.
my car messes up, I go get it fixed. I was just saying the other day, were you and I talking about this? I was like, oh my gosh, I can never not know how much a gallon of milk is or a loaf of bread. Like, I never want to get that far removed. And I literally don't have to worry about it. Honestly, I could just go in and pick up what I want, put it in my basket. I don't even think about it. I never want to feel that comfortable.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Like, how much is a gallon of gas? How much is like all the things?
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. Because I think that proximity of, for me, to make sure I'm still looking through the lenses of inequality, injustice, for a variety of things. That's one of the reasons why I really don't have to continue to keep using Instacart right now, but I
Yep.
get my groceries delivered and I tip really well because I know right now that's the
Yes.
only for some. It's
Yep.
their only. Let me tell you something. The amount of diversity of people that come and bring me my groceries. I was telling my daughter this the other day, has been a much older generation.
Yes.
Majority of the time, these are like my parents dropping the groceries off.
Right.
And very rare, that's been the majority of, and many times it's husband and wife teams. I've had so many husband and wives come to drop it off. And so I'm always like, oh my gosh, should I tip them more? I'm really, I'm
Yep.
really paying attention to the inequality and the injustice of just what COVID has impacted us with
Well,
and everything else.
and that's such a good example of everyday allyship,
That's good.
right? Where that's just like, that is, because this is all, to me, again, it's the little things that we're doing all day long.
Yes.
There's
Yes.
no silver bullet. There's no one thing that an organization or a leader can do, but it's the choice, right? I'm going to keep ordering Instacart and I'm going to tip really well because I know that there are people that are so deeply economically impacted by this,
Yeah.
right?
And I can do it.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
I couldn't do it, I would find a different way. So for those who are like, I can't find it, like, you have to make this commitment as an organization and as an employee to justice. It doesn't have to be political, right? And matter of fact, when you think about your organizational work, it should be apolitical, right? You shouldn't lean one way or the other. Is apolitical the right word?
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. So, right. So you want to ensure that you are focusing in those communities at the margins. And what would that world look like if it was just for all? And you have to be very specific with your actions in which you do that.
Well, and I think if we use the disability community as an
Mhm.
example, you want to talk about a group that is hyper marginalized,
Mhm.
and if you're not following any disability activists, you absolutely should be,
Yes.
because the intersectionality there on race, class, gender, um, and then the outsized impact that COVID has had on that community. And we have laid bare inequity when it comes to disability. Uh, so it's one of those, I don't even know where I was going, Michelle, right? Just in terms of this, but if you want to, right, if you want to focus, that's not, people with disabilities don't fall in one
Yeah.
political, right?
Spectrum.
But it's, what are you doing around justice? And I've found this, um, what I found to be interesting, again, as we were talking about like all the acronyms right now, I'm seeing I'm seeing companies get better at diversity, better at inclusion, and they're talking about equity and they're talking about justice, and I see much less. They're using the acronym, like everybody's using the E now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make sure then you're actually doing something about equity.
Yeah.
And if you're
Yeah.
using the J, make sure you're actually
You
doing
something
something
about
about
justice.
justice.
Yeah, I think and you've seen this continuum. It used to be we would talk about diversity, right? And then so diversity meant, what do your numbers look like? How many people of color do you have? What are your age? All that. And then it was like, okay, now we're going to move now we're going to really think about, okay, now we have diversity. How do you think about inclusion? right? Are they being included? Are your attrition right? You're bringing people in, but musical chairs. They come in and then they attrit out.
And I still see that, Michelle. I mean,
Yeah, all the time.
our numbers haven't changed because we haven't taken care of inclusion and belonging and equity.
Right.
I still think there's an oversized, there has to be such a balance.
Yeah.
And I think
also today, Maureen, I'm sorry to interrupt you, is that social justice that used to sit out here, like not even on the margins, like they weren't in the room. Like there was a social justice, it was like, oh yeah, that doesn't really affect the companies today. The belief system has to be joint with your DEI. Oh, this is funny. I say, it's funny when you look now, just Google companies and are they using inclusion, diversity, equity, belonging?
What order?
What order? What order is it?
Before it was diversity, right? And then it was diversity and inclusion. And then I'm seeing inclusion and diversity and Jedi, and it's like alphabet soup.
Yeah.
And if you're intentionally gonna use that letter, there better be action behind it.
That's the point I was getting to, is like right now, when you have your plans and when you put it together, the most important thing is to be really clear on your purpose, right? What is your purpose? And then underneath your purpose is then, okay, now what actions are we actually going to take as an organization? It doesn't matter if you have 100 employees or 100,000 employees. Like employees want to see action, and it needs to be built around a framework of what that looks like. And we use words like it has to be bold and brave and deliberate, and then inspiring action across all levels of communities, right? And so right now, we need to have a double click focus on the African American Black community and our Asian community. Like for you just to say, we're going to take care of all, yes, we do, but now you need to double click into actions around those two communities.
Yes.
Right. And Hispanic Latinos in there as well. But the communities that have the insecurity of being right now is the African American Black community and the Asian community. Right.
And Michelle, again, hyper marginalized people with disabilities.
Yes. Yeah.
Because the health impact of COVID on them, right? And the oversized people that are losing jobs, right? That community has lost jobs. They are seeing people daily take actions that put their lives at risk.
Yes.
Right? So it's puzzling to me how we keep missing that in terms of who is their the everyday, right? Let's not forget them in this conversation right now.
You know what? I didn't even think about that, Marie. My son is autistic, and as you heard me, you said earlier, and he was working at a library and where he is and coming in, and it's shut down.
Right.
There's nothing there, and he hasn't been able to find anything else that meets him around his ability in the way he shows up with Asperger's with another organization or group.
Exactly. And so and again, like quite literally, because of being immunocompromised or because of fragility in health, whatever it may be, imagine, watching all these people that are putting your health at right. So like that, talk about not feeling like you're included and belong. Like this is not even like that's justice work right there. That's equity work right there. So I think that's don't miss that. And again, this is where, man, y'all, intersectionality, and every single day, what's the thing you're doing? And again, Michelle, I think, talking about there's an oversized impact that leaders have, but every single one of us.
Yeah.
The choices.
Personal action. I think that's as I know we're getting ready to come to our wrap up time. For me, I think that's the takeaway is like, don't look outside of yourself to do something.
This is your truth bomb. Stop.
Oh, this is my truth bomb. Okay, go.
Your last truth bomb, and I think this is it. Give it to me, Michelle.
Yeah, I feel that with everything deep down in my soul. It's like just first of all, right now we need people that have radical candor, right? Tell us, don't get hung up on the political correctness. If you want to understand somebody, just use your empathy, your vulnerability, and ask the question. And then, but do it after you've taken some time and energy to do some stuff yourself. Like when I don't understand something around, I don't know, let me just, I just ask somebody this.
Right.
Yes. Ramadan is a good one, right? I was just asking the other day, it's like, what can I do? I'm always learning. So go to the Everyday Inclusion app, because I'm going to plug that 100 times over. And if you don't like it, I don't care. And then, but then there's other things like Amazon Prime has Click, look here, Asian AAPI stuff, Black communities, Netflix, and then read a book, listen to a white paper, like talk to a friend.
Yes. Yeah.
Have people like Maureen in your life.
Have people like Michelle in your life.
And also, by the way, let me just say, sometimes when we're going through this, I'm like, I need a glass of wine right now. What about you? We've had a hard day. Yeah.
So you could see why I was excited to have Michelle on. And Michelle, thank you for all that you do, not just for Cisco, but you share so generously in the DEI community with best practices. You share so generously in all of your communities. And I so appreciate that because the ripple effect that you have is really extraordinary.
Oh, thank you. It's with people like you that helps with the journey. So I appreciate you and Moxie and everything you guys have done. You've been an amazing partner and developed friendship. And oh my gosh, we can talk forever. So let me just stop talking right now.
Thanks, you all. Thank you, Michelle. We will see you next week on Everyday Inclusion and Belonging. Cheers. Get out there and do the next right